Okay, he's going to run as a Democrat. You got that part?
The Dan York State of Mind program is brought to you at part by Lookout Rhode Island and Taco Comfort Solutions.
Okay, welcome in. So it's been a hectic political week. Last night, as I said, I thought Link Chafee was as sharp as he's ever been in answering the questions. Whether you agreed with him or not, his announcement that he's 90, 92, 94, 96, 97, 98, 99% ready to run for Senate against Sheldon Whitehouse in the Democratic primary kind of rocked everybody and may have stolen a little bit of the oomph out of the headline for our guest this evening, who is Matt Brown, our former Secretary of State, who took a little bit of a, at least high-profile political sabbatical here, and then pop comes out of literal nowhere only weeks ago to say that he's back. He's been living here, but I mean he's back, and he's running for governor as an independent. And then something changed. This week he announced that he's running as a Democrat. Joe Fleming, our pollster, reflected.
So it's going to be a definite uphill fight for Matt Brown in this race. Also keep in mind the fact that he has not been in office for like 12 years. He's not that well known anymore. He has to get himself known to the voters. He has to reintroduce himself to the voters. Joe's
probably right on that. Welcome. You're just a little grayer, so am I. But other than that, you look the same.
You look
good to see you.
Terry. Good to see you.
What up? what? By the way, we were on the radio 2 days ago, as we taped yesterday. I wanted to punch a wall when we were done. I was just so frustrated with you, and I probably spewed. Were you listening? I probably spewed. You probably weren't.
I heard
aloof
about it.
candidate that you are, who doesn't want to get into the weeds on anything that I care about. So this could be a dandy tonight. I don't know if we could. There could be figurative blood on the floor here. So, but I've always, as I said yesterday, man, I've always dug you. I know you've got real concerns about issues and the like. But I'm hoping that we're going to get some logistical answers as to what you were thinking politically, strategically over the last few weeks, and then we can get into some of these issues that I think you're really, really keen on. Whether you cooperate with me is your bailiwick. But I have to ask you the question. So, you came back and you said, I'm gonna feel this thing out, and you announced that you're going to run. Most likely, you formed the committee
to explore
as an independent.
Yeah.
What happened? What happened that moved you? Let's consolidate. What happened that moved you to a decision to run for Democratic primary against the governor?
So I went out, it's been maybe 5 or 6 weeks, and did these house parties, went around talking to people across the state. We had, anywhere from, 20, 25 and up, people sitting in living rooms of friends and associates from around the state, people of all different backgrounds. And what I saw was just a lot of energy, growing energy, drive for exactly the kinds of changes that I had put forward and exactly the kinds of ideas I'd put forward to change things in the state from within the Democratic Party. And so, look, I was Democratic Secretary of State. I voted in Democratic primaries. So that was the thinking, is let's work with people from across the state within the party who care about the things I do and get in this Democratic primary.
Did you poll the question?
I did not poll the question. I did not poll the question of running.
Was there a poll out commissioned by you on your overall persona, strategy, issues, whatever?
Yeah, we did a poll, yeah. Okay. But not on the question of, I'd already decided to run in the Democratic primary.
Before you polled?
Yes.
Why?
For the reasons I said, yeah.
Okay.
Seeing this, and you see this. I mean, look, we've all read about it across the country. This kind of growing energy, enthusiasm, whatever you want to call it, for the kinds of changes that I believe in and have always believed in, and that I'm talking about in this campaign within the party. And we're seeing it here too, and seeing it all across the state. So that was the reason why I made that decision before we did any polling.
So this vibe that you get is what? Define, is it brandable? Is it definable? Is it Bernie Sandersable? Is it I mean, because that progressive political brand in some ways self-labeled, guys like Aaron Regenberg, who's running for lieutenant governor, who's maybe the General Assembly ringleader on this concept. They embrace that brand. They're trying to connect on what they consider to be a set of issues that would define themselves that way. You're a pretty liberal guy, I think, you know, on the spectrum. Is this the branding connectivity that you sensed when you were out there, and is this the group that's going to support you in this race? Your projection?
You know, one of the interesting things about it was that this energy that I'm talking about, this viewpoint that we need big changes, particularly to the way the economy works, but also other things. But it's really largely about how the economy works and how it essentially hasn't been working for people broadly for a long time. It's been working for big corporations, big banks, the very wealthiest sliver at the top. That feeling and the frustration about that actually cuts across, I think, political viewpoints, backgrounds, economic backgrounds.
Meaning anti-establishment thought? That's what last night Link Chafee identified that. I mean, he used a lot of the same language that Donald Trump did, while really not agreeing with much of what Donald Trump has to say, but feeling that kind of, that still lingering anti-establishment mindset. Is that what you're pointing to?
I think that's definitely part of it. I think the anti-establishment idea is part of it, but it's really secondary to the more basic idea that things aren't good, they haven't been for a long time, and they need to change. And then you get to the point, I think, where a lot of people say, well, who's been in charge for all this time? And why haven't things changed? And why did things end up this way? And part of what I'm saying to people is that it didn't get this way by mistake. Things have gotten this way slowly over time because of decisions that governments have made over a long period of time and are still making.
What do you define this way to be? What is this way?
Well, this way is that, so if you look around the state, so you can look at stock market, you can look at GDP, you can look at all kinds of data, you can look at employment data, but the economic fact that really matters, I think, for most people is that for decades now, incomes and wages have not been close to keeping up with the rising costs of the things people need to pay for. Housing, we have a big affordable housing problem here. College, childcare, healthcare, those have all skyrocketed over the course of my lifetime, and incomes and wages have wavered between stagnant and declining. They haven't gone up for most people. So that just means that life is harder and getting harder, and people are really worried about it. And they're worried also about their kids, because how's this going to end? How's this going to be in 20 or 30 years? So the point that I'm making is that you know, we're told, I think, by government and politicians that this is just sort of the way it is. This is the system. We're doing the best we can. There's just not enough money to go around. And that's just not true. This is the richest country in the world. There's a lot of money in this country. But it has all steadily, as you know, consolidated to big banks and big corporations and a very small sliver of the very wealthiest people at the top. And that has taken money away from people in communities for a long time. So that's how you end up with the fact that people can't afford the things they need. It's how you end up with school buildings that are falling apart, which is crazy in the United States of America, that our school buildings are literally falling apart, that our hospitals are bankrupt and closing. I mean, we didn't get here by mistake. We got here because of a philosophy that drives wealth and economic and political power to a relatively small group of very large corporations and banks.
Now listen, this speech may be resonating more than it has before. If you're not, you know, tuned into that, then you're missing it. But there are a lot of us that start to smell a taxable rat here. Not the persona, but just the notion that somewhere along the line, even those of us who are busting our tails for a living better hold on to our wallets. When we come back, we'll talk about it. Stay with us. That's a lot of people who say they want to be the governor. Take a look at that, Matt. Did you see the video? There's a lot of people. You're up there on the top left. It was so funny yesterday.
That's an old picture.
That's an old picture of you?
Yeah.
All right, we'll try to update. Yeah, you're right. So a little less gray. But there's a couple guys here I don't even know. I'm serious. The guy in the bottom middle, who's that kid again?
Danielle Luis Munoz.
Yes, he was here. Danielle Luis Munoz, he was here as a guest, and reportedly he's still running. The guy up in the upper right is Roselli, right? What's his first name? Paul Roselli, yes, he's running as a Democrat. So you got three Democrats on the top there, and then of course you got Ellen Fung, the alleged leader on the Republican side, Patricia Morgan, the minority leader on the right there, Giovanni Ferrosi on the bottom left corner. So right now it is a rather full field, and you know, for pundits and people who pay attention to this stuff for a living, it's better than nothing. You know, it's better than having a boring race. You changed the entire dynamic of this race when you A, announced that you wanted to run as an independent, and B, more intensely, I think, when you decided that this was going to be a Democratic gubernatorial race. I'm not going to continue to beat your forehead over the idea that you're not being specific enough about polling data. I get where you're going to be. I'm trying to buy the idea that this thing kind of resonated and you started to feel a natural kinship to the Democratic primary, and that's why you're there. But somebody who's smart had to have told you that your chances in a general as an independent were probably in that 10 to 20% range lower end, that your chances inside a primary with some of this percolation might be a whole lot better. I think Gina Raimondo is probably relieved that you're not going to draft 10 or 12 or 15% off of her in a general as an independent from the left, and would rather get after it inside a primary. Reflect on that, please.
No.
No one said
no
anything
one said
about
that. I think I don't.
Who are you talking to? You don't talk to anybody that talks about this stuff? I mean, dude, who do you party with? The whole Democratic state right now is talking about that, the nature of those numbers. Everybody.
Yeah, I mean, I think first of all, I think it's impossible to predict. So I don't. You know, I think if we've learned anything about politics, especially the last few years, is that it's unpredictable. And so I don't know. I don't know what the pundits feel or the analysts feel about better to be in a primary or a general. I mean, I don't know. But no, this was about, as I said, picking up on the energy out there, which I think, by the way, you know, there is a viewpoint, and it's certainly my viewpoint, that campaigns are driven and sometimes determined not by what you find in a kind of an early poll that shows majorities, but by intensity. So where's the intensity in in the state? Where's the intensity in the electorate? And I think there's a lot of intensity for the kinds of changes I'm talking about, particularly these economic changes and how we get money and opportunity and economic power back into communities and back to people.
I want to get back to some of these issues because they're important, including the wallet holding thing. But are you going to align yourself with anybody on various ticket places? Are you partnering? Have you been approached to partner? Are you doing some brand identity to link together concepts about who's kind of akin to who in this primary season?
No, I mean we just started yesterday, so I'm sure we'll partner with the number of people, and I'm sure there'll be others who won't be with us. So I'm.
Well, you're going to present a problem for some of the establishment Democrats. I threw Nellie Gorbea at you yesterday. She'll probably, I can see her because she's too smart for everybody. She'll probably say, well, listen, I'm the Secretary of State and I'm the officer in the election. I really shouldn't be. I can literally predict what she will say to me. I really shouldn't be weighing in on these races because I conduct them. I'm the Secretary of State. She's a former player with you. I'm a good friend of yours, I know. She and the governor are formally tight. I don't know what's going to happen now. But that's an example, I think. And I'm trying to pick on Nellie. We like you here. But that's an example of what you do when you get into this Democratic primary. You upset that relationship apple cart. You're not that naive to that situation.
Yeah, no, I know. But I was, I did this once before, Secretary of State, and I really, you can become really consumed with all of that. I mean, getting the endorsements, figuring out who's with whom, and all that. I actually don't think it adds up to much in the end. I think voters don't make decisions based on if somebody got a political endorsement from somebody else.
Other than this year with the progressive movement at the State House, I mean, the Bernie Sanders layout in the last election and the progressive movement in the State House, which has, for lack of a better term, conservative Democrats really fretting. They're really worried about it. And this guy like Regenberg, who's running for lieutenant governor, a position that people laugh at. Maybe not so much now with Dan McKee's performance, because I think he's done a good job. But that race before this week was kind of identified as like a national microcosm of the fight between progressive left and for lack of a better term, the old-fashioned Democrat left. Does he hook up with you does the governor have a decision now to make? Does she, actively pick McKee? Are there tandems here? What happens?
I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, give it.
Will you take the meeting? Have you taken the meeting?
Yeah, no, but I'd be happy to. And so
with either one of those two guys, or or is it Regenberg? Tell me, is there going to be a ticket-ish type of thing going on here for the voters to identify with?
I really don't know. I mean, we'll check back in a few weeks. I mean, we just started, so I'm happy to meet with anyone. And politics is addition. You want to get as much support as you can, and so we'll see. But as I said, I think the political endorsements are. I mean, they're nice. I'm not against them.
I'm more concerned about the partnerships and the endorsements, the conceptual identity for the voter as to who's more or less on this platform versus that platform.
Yeah, I don't know where those partnerships or potential partnerships will end up. I think hopefully those decisions are made based on people's ideas and what they believe, and so they might align because of their ideas. Sometimes, as you know, these decisions are made more tactically. If somebody transactionally, if somebody thinks they can help one, they'll help the other. Back and forth. So we'll see. So I don't know, but
You're not naive or 36,000 feet too high to recognize that and to engage in that if you have to.
Oh, yeah, of course. I mean, look, that's what I said. Politics is addition, so I want to get everybody we can.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
That's a candid answer. All right, we'll get to the money issues because there's plenty in running the state when we come back. Stay with us. There she is, our incoming governor, Gina Raimondo. I know you say you're running on ideas, but I've heard a little bit more practicality in this discussion than in our radio discussion, so we're making progress here. You have a race against that woman. You're aware of that?
I'm aware, yes.
Yeah. She has a funny position in that she can't break any kind of 38, 39, 40, 41, 42% ceiling depending on what poll. She is stuck. Which is, I'm talking about generally. Now, in the Democratic side, she's still doing fairly well and is the odds-on favorite to win this thing. You're going to have to win it with ideas and with some dough. I'm guessing you're raising some dough. Yes.
Starting to, yeah.
Okay. I mean, it's going to be you're going to get $1 million into this thing because you're going to need it.
Yeah. I mean, my feeling about the fundraising is you want to raise as much as you need, but you don't need to raise more than that. And so, as much as you need in Rhode Island to get a message out, especially when you can do the best possible way of getting a message out here like you can't do in other states, which is go out and meet everyone. So yeah, we'll have enough to get the message out. Let's
talk about some of the issues that are really front and center for the state right now. You and I, let's pick one, the schools, since you mentioned it. I have the governor right here. Shame on me because I didn't ask for it, but we'll run this highlight from time to time over the course of the political season. I had her right here in this chair, and I said to her, listen, this $1 billion school plan that you have is not $1 billion. She agreed. She's been marketing as a $1 billion school plan, new spending. There's already $80 million a year in the general budget baked into the renovations of schools where the state reimburses local communities. So the number is only $500 million of new proposal, $250 million of which is already contemplated, and 2 years from now it'll be another bond. Then the first $250 million is going to be gobbled up mostly by the city of East Providence and a couple of other communities. My point being, ain't enough. So, A, do you agree with that? And B, where in the heck is it going to come from?
I do agree with that. And here's the problem with where we are now. First of all, as I said earlier, it's crazy in the United States of America that school buildings are falling apart.
Agreed, but we've let it go, and so what do we do?
Right. So the question is, how did we end up here? And why have we not funded our schools enough so that they can keep up the buildings? But also, it's what's going on inside the buildings. As you know, it's been, I mean, look, I was working in the schools 25 years ago when we were starting City Year, and we were tutoring kids in the schools. We were having the same conversations then, exactly the same conversations that we are now, which is why can't we have schools in this state where every kid can get a great education? Why can't we do that? And we've got, a whole community slipping through the cracks. We're dead last, as you know, in the country for the education of Latino kids, which is the fastest growing population in the state. So we're so far
That's due in part to a bias that the state has for the Latino community, which it has caused people to say that I suddenly had a lobotomy and all of a sudden became a liberal. But I disdain what has happened with the electorate's general disposition. This immigration thing, the whole Latino thing, there's a bias that we need to get over. We need to get over fast.
Absolutely, and education is everything. I mean, it's opportunity. It creates a livelihood for people.
So not to rush you. Where do you find the bricks and mortar dough?
So here's the thing: is that two things. One is that for 2 decades we have cut taxes on the very wealthiest people in the state and corporations, and it hasn't worked because trickle-down economics, in my view, never does. So the economy hasn't done well. We're still struggling the same way we've been since manufacturing left 70 years ago when it started to leave. And we haven't funded our schools and our kids and the future. So I think we should repeal those taxes on the top tier.
All right, where does it start? Making how much dough? Get right to it. Who on the couch right now ought to fear you in terms of a repeal of a tax cut?
No one should fear, because first of all, right now, the wealthiest slivers, let's say 500,000 and above, the wealthiest sliver in our state pay a lower tax rate than everyone else. That's how extreme it's got. I mean, we had a 40% tax cut for the wealthiest people back in 2006. The federal tax reform that was just done, 47% of the benefits of that are going to go to the 5% wealthiest people in Rhode Island. So it's just fixing the tax system and making it more fair. So what happened?
So $500,000 earners, adjusted gross income AGI at $500,000. Those are the people you're going to start to talk about.
Yeah, something like that. But we're going to put out a whole plan of it. But we got to look at that, because what happened over 20 years when we cut those taxes? Problems didn't go away, needs didn't go away. What happened was school buildings fell apart, literally. And what happened was to get some extra money, cities and towns were forced to raise property taxes, which hits the middle class.
We have a per capita spending for students, though, that is not on the bottom of the list. So is this, some people would say, a problem with collective bargaining, and that we've given away the store too much in terms of benefits and the like for teacher unions?
No, I would say actually that the problem is the larger economy. So a lot of the issues that we have to deal with, particularly in our cities with students, has to do with the fact that we've got high poverty in this state, highest poverty in the region, that we've got an affordable housing problem, and all of these things affect the kids when they go to school. So that's about the larger change to the economy.
So to improve the economy, Governor Raimondo has chosen winners and losers in targeted industries. You agree?
Disagree. So look, Rhode Island had a booming economy. People forget this. We had a booming economy for a century and a half. Started with Samuel Slater, right? The Industrial Revolution, and it ran through the middle of the last century when all the manufacturing started to leave. That was a booming economy. In 1940, there are 100,000 more people living in Providence than there are today. The reason we had a booming economy is because we led.
So to boom it, we got 30 seconds.
Boom it. We got to do 3 things, okay, in 30 seconds. We've got to lead on the energy revolution, going from fossil fuels. We shouldn't be building a frack gas plant. We should be the leader in clean energy in the region and in the country. Secondly, we need to invest in healthcare, not cut Medicaid and have our hospitals go bankrupt and close. Healthcare used to be a strong suit in our economy, and now it's collapsing. Third, we need to invest not in the massive corporations that don't need money. We need to take some of that $350 million and help the small businesses, which is the lifeblood of our economy here.
That was good. In terms of execution. You and I will have many a debate. It's good to see you.
Good to
wish
see
you
you,
the best of luck.
Thank you very
Don't be a
much.
stranger as we move the campaign along. All right, interesting week. Final word and we'll be back. Brown's a blue chip candidate. Governor Raimondo's got some work to do, and so does the mayor of Providence, who has a veteran school guy as a new opponent, who you will meet on Monday. Have a great weekend. Don't forget Monday at 3 on WPRO. Good night.